Hello, children, and welcome to the most downright unpleasant hard sell ever made. No, really. Instead of the usual combination of semiotic analysis, bewilderingly obscure references, and dick jokes, I thought for this year's Halloween special that we'd just go down a more traditional route of looking at some adverts and such like that are genuinely frightening and or horrifying. And again, really. There is some downright harrowing and stomach-churning material in this episode, so bail out now if you're at all squeamish. I mean, assuming you haven't already. And don't say I didn't warn you. First, we need to figure out why an advert would want to scare you in the first place. I mean, as a motivator of action, fear is quite potent, but it's also inherently negative. Adverts generally want you to feel good about the product, unless they're being fashionably ironic, or think they are, by offering up unpleasant imagery with a raised eyebrow and a hair. And that usually backfires. Remember this.
Excite. Extreme mint refreshment.
It's not scary so much as just horrible and stomach-churning. It became, almost immediately, the most complained about advert of all time, although it's since been overtaken several times, and the current number one is a KFC advert depicting people talking with their mouths full. Because Britain. We're very concerned with the things in people's mouths. One potential legitimate motive to scare people into buying something is the nature of the product itself. If it's something protective, you can get far by making the viewer fear the consequences of not using it. Bleach, for instance, and other such germ-killing efforts, even before there was a plague. You might remember a few from the episode I did on the subject, or the presenter bot did on the subject, many of which genuinely got some knuckles wrapped for putting the shits up old ladies. Like this one. Come on, you don't even see anything in that. And even the later one with the dripping CGI monstrosities voiced by Hollywood psychotics, which also got in trouble for scaring the kiddies.
This neighborhood has always been safe. They tried cleaning it up, but nobody could touch us in the shower corner. E. coli, staphylococcus, and us guys were free to peddle misery.
But now, they hunt us down! We've become their prey! So here we are. Cornered. We can almost hear the finger on the trigger.
The finger of death.
Domestos spray. Millions of germs will die.
Are mostly too cartoonish to actually infuriate anyone older than, say, 10. But, as I said, the message in the end is still positive. These monsters will die, assuming you hand over your cash to Unilever. It has a happy ending. The inherent instruction is still, do this thing. Now, for actual good faith attempts at painting trousers brown, the message has to be a negative one. Do not do this thing. And that puts us in the realms of public information films again. We looked at some a couple of months ago. Not many of those used terror as a tactic, however. There was the slow-motion horror of Jane Asher's crash test dummies. A touch of suspense in the dipshit who kills his eyes. The visceral explosion of Petrol Boy here. Urban hellscape of the heroin one. The one most like an actual horror film was Don't Give Fire a Chance.
Something's been burning. You've a loaded socket! Oh,
Stylised to be quite literally nightmarish, with high contrast lighting and selective colour, it's very much Tim O'Mara's masterpiece. And it may not seem like high praise, in a career dominated by, and indeed almost exclusively consisting of, several hundred episodes of Coronation Street and Emmerdale, but those shows don't make themselves, you know. And this is actually very good. It scared me when I was a kid. Not so much now.
done! Bye-bye, house!
Don't give fire a chance.
Then again, so did this.
Portable fire is your friend, most of the time. But give it half a chance by putting it too close to your washing or yourself and your furniture, and your friendly fire can be a deadly foe. Keep fires at arm's length.
Don't wait for it.
Keep fires out of harm's way.
Well, I was 7, and therefore not the target audience. They probably wouldn't have been as genuinely terrified as I was at that last roar. So what you got for scaring adults with? What's so important they need to be scared straight from it? Well, road safety's a good one. People die. That's, generally speaking, to be discouraged, through fear if necessary. Guilt's usually more potent than raw fear, but given the subject matter, that can still involve the use of film techniques associated with horror, as seen here. And that's certainly chilling. Outright scares have been attempted too. This one from 1995 is perhaps a little gauche.
Mark, he's a great bloke. Someone you can trust, you know? A really generous guy. Great bloke. I mean, last Christmas there were these 2 kids. He gave them a Christmas they'd never forget. He killed their mum and dad. He'd only had a quick one. Thought he was okay to drive. Oh yeah. A great bloke.
Oh, astonishing sod ape. Welcome. Seemed effective at the time, though, and has still been known to set the old unwary viewer egg-bound. More effective is this more recent one. And personally, I believe you already had adequate warning, but still, take care if you've got a weak heart. Jump scares. Everyone fucking hates jump scares. Fuck you, jump scares. Fuck you to the moon and back. You can't deny they're effective.
Hello?
This made more impacts, no pun intended, than any drink driving piff had for years, and arguably more than any has since, particularly since they've gone down the silly bants route instead of trying anything effective. Mind you, they can still be quite scary in their own way, albeit by accident.
Right, I'm off. Guys, I'm out of here. I'll see you later.
What in the brass fuck?
It's not that far to walk.
Okay, look, in all seriousness, if you want to prevent someone from drink driving, don't simulate a terrifying mental breakdown in front of them. They'll call the police if they don't just stick a fork in your eyes from sheer confusion. The scariest piffs are generally the medical ones, because they're warning you against something that could, and as far as the piff is concerned, inevitably will kill you. Take the apocalyptic Nick Rogue, Sammy Harari, Hans Zimmer AIDS campaign, which ran on all channels when you least expected it for several months in 1987, and traumatised a generation, specifically mine. I'm honestly surprised I wasn't even more fundamentally messed up by this thing than I actually was. Luckily, at the age of 5, I had no conception of plagues and epidemics yet, or I would have just assumed my own death right there. I very nearly did anyway. But even the monolith is not the most harrowing piff, medical or otherwise, ever made. This is the part where we start getting into the really hard stuff, by the way, so feel free to stop watching if you're a wuss. Before AIDS, an equally, if not more terrifying disease was on British people's minds. Rabies. The fact that this disease is still around in America, to the extent that it's treated downright casually over there, is one of a great many things about that country that scares the shit out of me. Rabies is possibly the most unpleasant disease in the world, short of penis cancer. Actually, it's far worse than penis cancer. Basically, it chews up your nervous system like Pac-Man, all the way from wherever you were bitten up to the brain, which is the virus's main cause, causing convulsions, madness, and incomprehensible agony before the blessed release of death. I wouldn't even wish it on Steve Bannon. Britain's been free of it for nearly 100 years, and good riddance, but we're still understandably terrified of it. And this terror reached a fever pitch in the 70s and pre-AIDS 80s, after we joined the European community, forging closer ties with other countries for foreign people, which hadn't eliminated rabies yet like we had. So there was a sudden wave of hysteria on the subject, with posters, pulp novels, and of course, public information films. Most of them just showed dogs existing, with a voiceover explaining how that might actually be a bad thing.
Just one animal allowed to land illegally could bring rabies to Britain. So if you suspect that any animal may have been abroad, find out. And if you're right, then tell the police. Rabies is a killer. We must keep rabies out.
Few showed the effects of the disease itself, because they're so horrible. The one out of all of them that did is still remembered today as 50 of the most harrowing seconds in British film history. A lot of my viewers will have known where this has been heading all along. If this really is new to you though, then before I play it, I want you to understand my full meaning as someone who has seen not a few public information films, that this really is one of, if not the, most disturbing piff ever made.
Gentlemen, word with you over here, please, madam. Is this all your baggage, madam?
The outcome of a sentimental impulse could mean a sentence of death for the animal you love and couldn't leave behind, and for you or someone like you, death in a manner that is beyond description. Whichever way you look at it, rabies means death.
Still here? Those of you that are might take comfort in the fact that this was swiftly edited down to remove the horrible footage of a man literally dying in agony before your eyes, and to just concentrate on the old lady instead. This version is actually more effective in one sense, however. The short version removes the closing reiterative slogan. Instead, it ends on its blunt conclusion.
The outcome of a sentimental impulse could mean a sentence of death for the animal you love and couldn't leave behind, and for you or someone like you, death in a manner that is beyond description.
Which is even more powerful because it's less artificial, and because, quite frankly, it's a true statement. For real horror, though, true repulsion, you need to go to the charity sector. Because here, they are actually and explicitly trying to raise your level of fear, or at best concern, usually over important things, like the welfare of the fucking planet we have to live on. Yes, environmental charities are good for a bit of horror.
It costs a lot to have a toilet seat made from the Earth's last mahogany trees. Mahogany furniture costs blood. If the Brazilian Indians who own the trees don't want to sell them, they can pay with their lives. For native peoples, animals, plants, and trees, mahogany is murder. Don't buy it. The killing won't stop until you take action.
Good luck cleaning that up.
You do not want to see what they have done in your bathroom.
They can be highly subtle as well, though, and arguably more effective.
All things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small, all things wise and wonderful. Oh, God will kill them all.
Jesus Christ. Generally, though, the technique is fuck subtlety, go for the throat. There is only a limited amount of time, after all. Besides, it's fun, and generates column inches. This is particularly well understood among the animal rights crowd.
Will everyone please take their seats? Very shortly, your row will be divided into units of 3. Do not obstruct the gangways whilst the cages are installed. There is no cause for alarm. These cages are for your protection. Please cooperate with the surgeons. They will remove your teeth and nails. This greatly reduces the incidence of cannibalism. It is in your interest to comply. Eating, sleeping, and defecating may cause some discomfort, but your space allowance complies exactly with government regulations, and you have the satisfaction of knowing that you are part of one of the world's most cost-effective production systems. You have nothing to worry about. This system has been tested on 45 million specimens, with, I might add, your approval. Welcome to the battery.
Peter, for instance, had long since transitioned into shock comics, rather than people with a point. I mean, this was 10 years ago. Supposed to be a statement against drinking milk, apparently. But Peter's shock tactics are mostly centred around sexualisation rather than terror. Also, they're twats. Some others are capable of being shocking, genuinely disturbing, and making a damn point. Like the Osiris of this shit, the pressure group now known as Respect for Animals, but which used to be called Lynx until the smelly stuff cried foul. Lynx, which I'm going to call them anyway because it's easier to say, invented this genre in the mid-80s when they inherited an anti-fur campaign from Greenpeace, who quickly got cold feet. You know the one. Directed, of course, by David Bailey, who didn't seem to have any issues with Fur in the past, but maybe he had a change of heart. And a shout out to Vangelis as well, because the sound design and music are as much a part of Weiss' works as Bailey's immaculate camera work. The actively accusatory slogan hasn't aged very well. It was innovative at the time for an advert such as this to actively call out the viewer for being terrible, but in terms of evils committed, the consumer, while far from innocent, lags behind the industry itself. A slogan like this pulls the focus the wrong way. Mind you, it could have been worse. The slogan was almost dumb bitches instead. Anyway, it was instantly iconic and a media sensation. Not to mention controversial enough that Greenpeace eventually disowned it, and it was retrospectively rebranded with the Lynx logo. The problem with something like this, however, is that absent the unlikely event that it actually solves the problem all by itself, you are eventually going to need to make a follow-up. And obviously you don't want it to be overshadowed by the first one, so the irresistible temptation is going to be to one-up it. Well, they managed that. In fact, they upped it by a factor of quite a lot more than one. And yet again, I have to warn you, you probably shouldn't watch this one on a full stomach. Anyone suddenly hungry for beef risotto? Yeah, me neither. After an avalanche of maggoty offal, there really is nowhere else to go except over-stylised pretension and empty shots, which is where they went in 1993 with Skinned, a 3-minute short film complete with credits, eventually cut down to a minute-long advert with the loss of almost literally nothing whatsoever. Either way, it doesn't have the impact of either of its predecessors. The metaphor's a bit obscure, and the puppet's just a bit goofy looking, but you can't really say of a tumbling, collapsing pile of wet meat and maggots. Still, clothing made with real actual animal fur is a lot less acceptable these days. And these adverts, well, the first two, are a big reason why. Well, there are certainly a few unpleasant sights and sounds among that lot, weren't there? Hope that's Halloweeny enough for you. Of course, the scariest material often comes from people who aren't trying to be scary at all. Sometimes, in fact, they're going for the exact opposite, for keep them. But a lack of resources, talent, understanding, or all three just makes them veer away at the last minute into the realms of sheer mind-bending horror. So just to make sure your nightmares are fully stocked for the foreseeable future, I'm going to leave you with possibly the only advert I will ever share from the Democratic Republic of Congo-Kinshasa, or possibly hell.
Oh, Beberico,
Bebe Rico, solo kitoko pona bebe na yo.
Oh, Bebe Rico. Oh, Bebe Rico. Na cosa io api. Solo kitoko, Bebe Rico. Oh, Bebe Rico. Na cosa